Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Today we want to talk about how to survive getting home. This is something that's very important that I hope all of you are thinking about and planning for, because you see, most people spend at least as much time, if not more time, at work and away from their home as they do actually in their home. And if something were to happen, something big that would cause chaos and panic while you're away from your home, how are you planning on getting home? Because that's the big key. You want to get back to your home, your base station where your family's at. You know, maybe you're off at work and your wife and kids are at home. You want to get home as fast as possible. And depending on the scenario, it could take a little bit of time and it could be a little sketchy just getting home. It may not be just a simple thing of getting in your vehicle and driving home under normal circumstances. We've already seen this kind of stuff just in our lifetime. We've seen it in other countries and even our own country when there's been some big natural disaster and traffic starts to back up and people aren't able to get home or leave the city or evacuate or whatever it is, and it causes congestion and problems. How much more so would that be if there was some kind of EMP or nuclear attack, or an asteroid, or CME, or something else, maybe even a massive economic collapse overnight? This could cause a lot of panic, and it could make it very difficult on you getting back home to your family. So it's something that you should definitely put a lot of effort into planning, thinking about it, training, and just getting ready for it, because it could very easily happen to you. This goes back to kind of, escape and evasion. I mean, that's really what it is. You're escaping the city, you're escaping your work, or if you're out shopping, whatever it is, to try to get back home. And it's going to be different for everyone, but there's a lot of things that everyone can do to kind of get ready for this. And the big thing is just doing this ahead of time. You can start doing this now to get ready. So you need to, number one, you need to know your surroundings. Know your surroundings where you are at work, or the area that you're going to. If you shop at a normal place all the time, be aware of what's around it, and be aware of the path that you go to and from. What is along that drive going home or going to work or wherever it is, and be aware of what's going on around it. You want to be aware of areas of crime, so that if you have to leave, escape, whether it in vehicle or on foot, you want to be able to avoid those areas of crime, because in times of chaos, those areas of crime could get much worse. You want to know where hospitals are in case you're injured. You want to know where the closest hospital or clinic is at. You want to know where water sources are at. Whether it's a creek or a pond or something like that, parks and golf courses and stuff, they have a lot of water sources at times. Know your back roads so that you can plan your trip getting out of there. And this is important. Movies portray this often, and sometimes they get it right, but a lot of times they get it wrong. If you have a vehicle and it's still functioning, you want to stick with that vehicle for as long as possible. But you also want to be ready to ditch that vehicle when it's obvious past its use. It no longer functions. You can't go where you want to go because of it. You've gotten yourself in a bind. The vehicle's stuck. Don't just hang out there forever, because it puts you actually in a more vulnerable position. So be ready to ditch that. When you're planning your escape and evasion, for most of you, I suspect it's going to be going out of a city and maybe out into the country where you live. You want to know where the trails are at. A lot of areas have a lot of hiking trails and a lot of biking trails. You want to know that. You want to stay away from your main thoroughfares. People, they're like anything in nature. They move along the path of least resistance. So they're going to take the major roads. They're going to go along major highways and stuff. And you want to avoid those if all possible. So you need to know another way to get home. And you need to plan this out. Have maps available where you've already planned out where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. And look for things like the trails and bike trails and hiking trails and even railroads or even abandoned railroads so that you can use those to get home. Avoid people, folks. You're going to have to avoid people, because in any type of SHTF, people, that's really the worst thing that you have to deal with. There are other things that are important and that are dangerous, But really, people, that's the biggest danger. And so you want to do whatever you can to avoid people. Avoid crossroads, avoid border crossings. And I'm not talking about the U.S.-Mexico border. I'm talking about the city limits, the county line, places like that where law enforcement, government, or just marauders may set up some type of a checkpoint to stop people. So avoid those types of places. And other places to avoid: churches, schools, malls, grocery stores. Those are all places that people are going to naturally congregate to in times of crisis. They're going to be looking for food and supplies. They're going to be looking for help from the government. They're going to be looking to go to their spiritual leader to just figure out what's going on. So avoid people if at all possible. Because in times like that, you're not really going to be able to trust pretty much anyone unless you've had a previous relationship and trust built with them ahead of time. When you're doing this, you want to look the part. I've talked on this channel before about the gray man tactics and about just blending in. This is going to be one of those places that it's important for you to blend in. So let's say you work in a job that you kind of have to dress up. Maybe you have to wear a suit and tie or just look nice. You don't want to be escaping, invading, looking like that, because you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. You're going to look like someone that's got money and it has resources, and you want to not do that. So you want to have a change of clothes with you if at all possible. You could look untouchable, kind of like a homeless person. That works really well. Have some old, dirty, ripped up clothes. Don't be afraid to put a little dirt on your face to kind of blend in. You could look like a janitor or a delivery person, something that just kind of blends in and people don't notice too much, or just the overall gray man. And what that is just look around you at what is considered the norm for dressing. You know, around here it may be jeans and a flannel shirt, and where you're at it may be sweatpants and a hoodie. So be aware of what is kind of the norm and just watch people. And the people that just kind of don't stand out, that's the kind of way you want to look so that you can blend in. When you're leaving and walking through the city or driving through the city to try to get out, you want to observe before you enter an area. If you're turning down a street and you're not too sure of it, you want to sit and watch. Look for people in windows, people on tops of buildings, people behind cars and other structures, so that you can be aware of a potential ambush. Because remember, in times of chaos, if it gets really bad, people will become very uncivilized and could do things that you cannot imagine. If you don't believe that, just look at recent history, things that's happened around the world where governments collapsed and society collapsed, and what people ended up doing. In a very quick time, they turned to very uncivilized behaviors. So be aware of that. Plan all this ahead of time. This is not something you want to be planning after it happens and you're sitting in your cubicle at work trying to figure out how to get home and you start trying to plan this. You want to do this now. Talk with your spouse or your family of how to what to expect and the ways that you're going to be getting home. You can have kind of checkpoints along the way, so that if you're trying to get home and maybe your family is trying to get to you, or someone in your family is trying to get to you, have different points that they would wait that are designated, that you're trying to get to that point to get to them. Have a backup plan to all of this, all of your routes to getting home, ways to get out of town. You want to have a backup plan. Have several of different ways to get home and know those really well. Get to know those areas, drive through them occasionally, be aware of potentially any changes, road changes, construction changes, what is around, so that you can kind of have a heads up if the day comes that you have to get out of town. Know how far you can travel. Now, this is obviously on foot. The average person should be able to make at least 10 miles a day. That may sound like a lot for some of you, and others that may just sound like not very much at all. But you need to be aware of how far you can travel, because maybe you have a 30-mile commute to work and that doesn't take that long, but now you're on foot and you're stressed and you're going over rough terrain and you're trying to evade people and you're having to stop and watch. 10 miles a day might be a very optimistic goal. It could take you 3 or 4 or 5 days just to get home, and be aware of that. Have your family aware of that and plan accordingly to that. do all this ahead of time. I'm telling you, people just, they kind of get it in their head that, yeah, that's what I would do, but they don't actually sit down and plan. They don't look at maps. They don't look at where, rivers, are there places to cross that river? Are there places that's going to be good to go to kind of provide cover, and that you could kind of hide out if you were, evading people, or places that's going to put you out in the open and too exposed. Make sure all this is planned. Once you're out of the city, if that's your goal, keep a steady pace. Stopping is not a good thing. When you stop, you increase your chances of death, basically. I personally, in my life, I've done a lot of survival training, escape and evasion, and I remember on one time, I went over 30 miles in one day. And yeah, I hit that point where I thought I just couldn't go any further, and I kept pushing myself, and your body kind of starts to numb to it, and you kind of don't even notice it. But when you stop, all that pain kicks in, the muscles tighten down, and it can get to a point that it's not just mental that you can't get up, that it's actually physically impossible for you to start moving again. So as much as you can, keep moving, but keep a steady pace. This isn't a race. You don't need to be running. The faster you move, the more increased chances are of you being injured. So just pick a steady pace and stay at it. You want to be aware of sounds and smells around you while you're walking, but you don't want to move too slow, you don't want to go too fast, and you don't want to stop if you can at all avoid that. When you're out in the country and you're escaping getting to home, it's the same thing. Avoid people and avoid farms. In all the apocalyptic movies, it shows someone, they see a farm up ahead and they're going to go there and go for help. That's not a good bit of advice. People on farms, you don't know that person isn't going to shoot and ask questions later. They know they've got animals, they know they've got supplies, and they know that people from the city are going to come out and try to take them. And you don't know what kind of person you're dealing with. So if you can at all possible, avoid them. Don't just think that, they're farmers, they're going to take me in. That's not always true. On your escape route home, if you're capable of having caches of food or supplies or even weapons, I would certainly do that. There's a lot of videos on YouTube to teach you how to do that, and how to place them. And that is a good idea if it's something that you can work out. And then also along your escape route, if you have friends or family where you can kind of have a place to regroup and to rest and clean up and refresh yourself, make sure you have an agreement ahead of time that they know that if something was to happen that you would show up, and so that you could kind of get yourself together and then move on. Because the same thing, you don't know how people are going to react in times of panic, and you think, I'm going to go over to my buddy's house and get some water, rest for a bit. And you start walking up his lawn and he's panicked and he just starts firing at you. So don't just assume that just because it's friend or family that it's always going to be safe to just show up. Have an agreement ahead of time. Other things is, know what's edible in your area. Know what you can eat and what's medicinal. It's good to have survival stuff with you. You all are familiar with bug out bags and get home bags, and they're great to have. And if you're able to have one of those with you, certainly do that. But you don't even have to have something that big, a small little survival pouch like this that you can keep in your back pocket or your coat pocket. This is something that I carry, I have with me pretty much all the time. And does it cover everything? Certainly not. But if I was surviving out in the woods and this is all I had, I could do pretty good for myself. Now, of course, I've had a lot of experience and training doing that. And so that's something that you should do also. You should, if at all possible, go out on camping trips and push yourself. Make them survival trips so that you're not, sleeping in a nice, comfortable tent and sleeping bag and you're eating food that you've brought with you. Push yourself to go out there and actually survive. When you're looking for food, you should try to have a little bit with you and plan accordingly to that. If you're going to be gone if it's going to take you 3 or 4 days to get home, you could say, well, I can go a lot longer than that without food. That's true, but you're going to be putting out a lot of calories trying to get home. And so it is good that you take in some calories. You need to. Don't just say, well, I can go 3 days without food. You will start becoming very weak. You would be more susceptible for illness. Your thinking and alertness is going to go down really fast. So try to have some food with you and know what's edible around you. And also, don't be afraid to scavenge for food. Now, I would never advise putting yourself in a dangerous situation or exposing, but you'd be surprised what you can find out there. Remember on one survival training that we went on, of course, we didn't have any food. We were going to live off the land. And I came across, I know this sounds gross, but I came across a bunch of dumped trash, big old trash bags. And I ripped it open, and guess what? I found almost an entire box of the oatmeal, little instant oatmeal packets. They were all sealed up and looked to be just fine to me. And I lived off of those for a couple of days. So don't be afraid to become uncivilized in this situation. You have to look past what we have been trained and conditioned, that's societal norms and how we should behave and what's gross and what's normal. When in a situation like this, you kind of have to throw that out the door for a while so that you can survive. And that's really the big key in survival. It's all up here. It's not as physically hard as you think. It's the mental toughness that happens. For the last few things, stay hydrated. Shouldn't really have to tell you that, but certainly do. I would keep water filtration, a small water filter with you, and I would keep purification tablets. And if I was drinking out of a ditch, now if I'm going to drink out of a creek like what's behind me, it's not going to be nearly as polluted. But if you're in a city and it's a drainage ditch and you need water, you need to have multiple ways to clean that water so that you can drink it. And then the last thing really is just try not to get hurt. That's really the big thing. So many times when people are out surviving and camping or get lost, the vast majority of the reason that most of them die is because they become injured, and then they weaken and they can't keep moving, and something happens because of the injury. So do your best not to get hurt. Don't do anything ridiculous. You're not Rambo, okay? Don't try to be Rambo. Just try to get home. And as scary as it sounds, it is very possible, and the human body is much more capable of things than what we ever thought we could do. And so if you get out there and do a little training, do a little practice, you'd be surprised what you're capable of. All right, folks, thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.